Marvel TV shows. It's not really a new topic, I don't think. I mean, people have been talking about this for a while now. I mean, they keep crapping a new one out every now and again. Today we're just going to be going over a bunch of all the Marvel shows, actually, with the exception of What If. It's not that I didn't watch it, I liked it. I only watched a few of the episodes, though. The reason I'm not going to be including it is because it's What If. That's not canon. Sorry. I actually really liked WandaVision. Now, WandaVision, in a weird sense, is probably the closest thing that we're ever going to get to a Marvel horror movie, in my opinion. It was very eerie and thriller at times, more than just your average Marvel movie, and I really liked it. Now, you don't technically have to watch this. It's kind of filler. It just explains a lot about Wanda and whatnot, and it can help with Multiverse of Madness, but I don't think you have to see it. It's not like a necessary thing. Considering some of its episodes were a little bit boring, like its first episode was kind of atrociously bad, I did really like, there was a lot of creativity in it. I liked how each episode was sort of a different time period of like TV shows and whatnot, and I think that was a really cool change between them. I think that it really helped to bring the show together and make it more interesting. I think the sort of twist with Wanda controlling an entire town wasn't really a twist at all. I think it was cool, but like I don't really know. It wasn't amazing and it wasn't perfect. We really didn't need to see more of Wanda. We were already going to see plenty of her anyways, but it was still kind of cool to see her. I think she peaked in Multiverse of Madness, so there really was no need for WandaVision, but it was still a very good show. I'd give that an easy 7 or 8 out of 10. Falcon Winter Soldier is the most boring show I've ever seen. It had really good fights in the first and third episode, and I really like the villain, how it's more about them just being mad that they got blipped, I think. Now they have the super soldier serum, kind of. I don't really remember. I'm not going to rewatch the whole show to make a 30-second review on a crappy YouTube channel, but for the most part, it was alright, but it was just boring. And then, of course, it got really political for, no reason whatsoever. There was so much politics about, what about the economic crisis revolving around blips? What? This is Marvel. I don't want to see politics. Don't make this like episode 2 of Star Wars. I don't want politics in my Marvel. Moon Knight, I actually just finished moments ago before I started recording this. I did enjoy Moon Knight. I think it was cool. I think the second season will be pretty cool with a sort of third variant. I think it's cool that we have a character with multi-personalities. We don't see that very often. I mean, as long as it's not an exact copy of the one from JoJo's, I think it's still pretty cool. I would really love to see more development on that, on how they're sharing a body and whatnot, because towards the end of the show they're showing kind of sharing and whatnot, and I really want to see more of Moon Knight in action. So much of the show is just he pulls out the suit and uses it to block bullets, and that's the longest he gets screen time with it. For the most part, he's either getting thrown around with it or just uses it to glide. There's so much of the show where it's just sort of dialogue, and it weighs down the show a lot. I did like the whole thing with the Egyptian gods and whatnot. I think that helped add a sort of new element to it, with the whole Thor and Greek god thing. I think it's cool to look into all these sort of multi-cultures and whatnot, but honestly, if I wanted to see Egypt, I would have just gone back to JoJo's Part 3. I don't think we really needed Moon Knight. I really didn't want to see it. I don't see how this will ever be able to play into the MCU's main timeline and whatnot, but for the most part, I don't think it was a terrible show. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It was kind of lame. The climax was boring. It didn't really have a good villain. He was just sort of an old guy who wanted peace. I mean, that's not exactly a new thing. The main villain was boring. The overall villain that he was working for, also boring. Even the protagonists were pretty boring. Not the two that were sharing the body, but the bird guy or whatever they were working for. It was all kind of boring, so 6 out of 10. It wasn't amazing. It had good moments, but that's not enough to save it. Loki was actually really good. I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of the fights and stuff were really boring. And I would say Loki relied almost 90% on dialogue and like no action, but I think it actually still turned out pretty well. It was very well done. I wouldn't call it a twist with the whole timekeepers, and that's probably why I'm not going to give it a high rating, is because it was so confusing. It was so overly complicated with the whole timekeeper, not alternate reality, but when he returned, it was a different universe without him, and the whole Kane at the end, but he lets himself die because they go beyond everything. It gets really confusing. I'm not even describing it that well. It gets very complicated with the whole multiverse and timeline and time-space continuum, but it was pretty solid, and if you want to give it any care at all, it's not impossible to follow. For that, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It was good, but there were pretty much no fights. The fight with against Loki and all the other multiverse of Lokis was kind of fun, but it only lasted about 30 seconds, so that was pretty boring. I did like the whole guard dog part where they're facing off against the sort of like cloud demon dog thing. That was cool, but it didn't last long either. So yeah, 7 out of 10.